If you're looking to get tips and strategies on how to optimize and stay healthy throughout the summer, this episode is for you. So, hope that you enjoy it. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Nutrition Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Andres Ayes, a registered dietitian. Super excited to be here. May was a pretty busy month, to be honest, and I got married. I went on a honeymoon to Maui, and I think I'm gonna try to record a separate episode, kind of talking about that entire process. We went on a 1 day spiritual retreat, which is literally going to be an entire separate conversation. In fact, I went on a retreat with one of my long life high school friends, Carol Better. She's actually been on the podcast. If you guys go back to episode, let me see if I can kind of find it on here on the list. She is episode number, I think it's like gotta be like 110 maybe. Let's see. I'm gonna tell you, it's episode 108. It's called Journey of Self-Discovery and Healing with storyteller and influencer Carol Better. So make sure you go and check that out. But I'm gonna be sharing our experience with it, which was out of this world. And it's something that made me start to think a lot about my spirituality and those things like that. So I'm excited about this. But today's conversation is going to be very tactical. I literally didn't post a new podcast throughout the entire month of May. It wasn't on purpose, but at the end of the day, I didn't really make a big deal out of it, mostly because, well, there were some other priorities in that month, and I was taking care of my clients, and I was taking care of my personal life, and obviously I put this on the side a little bit, but we're starting back up. Last week we posted a new podcast episode with Megan Ware, and it was a great nutrition personality types, and that was awesome. Today I'm going to be talking a bit more something a little bit more summary, and it's a little bit more tactical and easier for you guys to sort of implement. I feel like a lot of times, like I need to kind of go back to basics, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. So summer's here, and depending on where you're listening this from, there's likely chances that, well, if you live up north, this is a good time for you to get out. With vaccinations happening all across the nation, if you live in the US, of course, more ease of restrictions are happening. So, of course, there are more gatherings and get togethers and things like that, too. And let's be honest, some of you guys listening to this pandemic really kind of like was a tough one for you, particularly in your health and fitness and your body in some cases, because, well, like there are some people that really didn't really make the best decisions throughout this time, and of course, stuff may have happened. So, anyways, I wanted to kind of go through that process and really kind of like go and explain a little bit more about some of these areas. So the first thing we're gonna go over today, and it's actually gonna be a blog, so of course you can kind of read the written version of this. We're gonna go over sort of like the tips for what not to do that you may be inclined to do, because most people, as we approach the summer, you're looking for something quick, and you and I both know that that doesn't lead to anything positive in the long term. So I'm gonna tell you what not to do, and then I'm going to tell you obviously what to do instead. Right now, the what not to do is are going to be pretty like silly things that I'm finding myself like watching on TikTok lately. And I'm talking about this, and I thought I didn't have to until I see how much like attention these influencers on TikTok get about promoting some of this like strategies or some of this like crazy things. So I figured, like, you know what, like I need to bring it up. I didn't think like people would be this naive about thinking that this is something that is going to help them. So, but again, going back to the whole idea, we have to start to figure it out, a better way to manage your nutrition in a way that you don't have to do anything drastic in order for you to be able to accomplish the summer body that you feel like you need. Because I mean, wouldn't it be better if you just get to maybe like April or May, you're like, oh, I just need to maybe time things up a little bit so I can kind of get ready for the summer. But it's not like you're making this massive and drastic change, because the problem with nutrition and dieting is the fact that people typically tend to kind of put it in like, okay, it's either on and off or off. Like I somebody kind of told me today, she's like, hey, you know what the problem, Andres, is like I typically have like this on and off switch. Like I think I'm either on or I'm off. And when I'm off, it's typically like I don't pay attention to my nutrition. I make terrible decisions, and that's usually something that may not lead to anything long term. On is like I'm like super all in. I am like focusing everything I eat. And the reality too is like these two extremes are not sustainable. Neither of them. One of them is gonna put us in a place where you just feel so like bad about yourself and you don't feel great and your energy is terrible. And the other one puts you in a place where you just start hating your life because of the fact that it's just simply so hard to maintain. So we need to first, like, of course, there are some things I'm gonna go be sharing today, but you need to first start to create an environment in which your decisions are easier to make and they can be made anytime throughout the year. That is like the main goal here. Here's what not to do. When you're preparing for like getting quick results to kind of have the summer body that you need or whatnot, most people typically have been going for juice cleanses or detoxes or juice like fasts. And the reality is that, and they do it because they think they're going to make them healthier. But the reality is, most people do it because they're going to make them lose weight quick. The science behind it is pretty simple, and I'm going to explain it in like the most simple things. Drinking only juice creates extreme calorie restriction, and extreme calorie restriction leads to weight loss. There's no other way to do it. If you're eating like a Twinkie every day and that's all you're eating, which is like maybe 300 to 400 calories, and that's all you're eating, you can do a Twinkie detox. And I promise you, you're going to lose weight, right? Is it the best approach? Absolutely not. So, juice cleanses, are they going to help you increase the amount of nutrients that you're getting in? Yes. Do I support juice, not juice consumption, and like green juices and all different things like that? I absolutely do, but I don't support them whenever that's the only thing that you're doing. So I don't necessarily think it's anything magic, and the weight is gonna come right back, or where you started, like, in the first place. And especially when you're preparing for like this one specific week, or you're this trip that you're kind of going to, like, what happens if you kind of, when you come back, like you go to the trip, the weight comes back, and then usually after that you're like, oh man, like I have this other thing, so I need to kind of redo it again. It's like this like never ending cycle. So juice cleanses, that's a big no. If you're doing it because of the health reasons, because you're detoxing your body, there's little clinical evidence to support that this actual juice cleanses are effective or actually quote unquote detoxifying your body. So that's something important to think about. Okay. Detox teas, it's another big scam nowadays happening in social media. Detox teas, they typically have like laxative agents, which they're going to simply get you to poop more, go to the bathroom more, and because of that reason you typically lose more water. That's obviously what gets that flatter stomach. That's what there's like this flat tummy tea, which is like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And yeah, they're laxative and diuretic, so they get you to really kind of lose a lot more water. But the reality too is that if you're losing water, that means you're losing weight. But if you're not losing fat, is that success? That's a question you need to really be asking yourself. The last two ones that, again, these are coming out from the most like kind of viewed like TikToks on social media. Apple cider vinegar, like there's absolutely nothing showing that apple cider vinegar leads to weight loss. And if it does, is like short term and mostly done in animals. So, and most likely related to the benefits I can have on insulin management. But the reality too is that it's not just like a this do this and then don't forget about it, don't focus about anything else. Like GB, for example, my wife, she typically drinks apple cider vinegar in combination with ginger and lemon because it makes her stomach feels good. She suffers from a lot of bloating, but it's not like she's doing it because she's trying to, or because she's just doing it for the purposes of losing weight. Last but not least, we have waist trainers, which is most people, I have no idea how people think that they're just going to lose more weight by wearing those things. Some people wear them because like they like shape their body, but the reality too is that you can be doing so much damage to your internal organs that it's ridiculous. And the reality is that when you're sweating more, you're losing water, you're not burning more fat. So what to do instead? I think it's like important for us to kind of like start to think about five simple tips. And this is going to be a pretty short episode, but I just wanted to kind of give you 5 tips to take away from you or from this conversation here today in a really kind of like short episode. So you can maybe start implementing it today. Number one, you have to hydrate. Like, because we're losing more water throughout the summer because we're sweating more, we need to incorporate more water on a daily basis. And there are different kinds of strategies to do that. I personally like to have a big 40-ounce water bottle, which I lost this weekend for the 11th time. I've spent so much money on water bottles, it's ridiculous. And I tell people, buy expensive water bottles because you're going to take care of them. And I'm the one person that actually doesn't. So, but the reality is that they usually kind of helps me stay hydrated. But right now I have a 25-ounce like shaker bottle, and I filled this up thing 4 times already today. So I know I'm like approaching one more. I'm going to be approaching closer to 1 gallon today, and it's not even 6 o'clock. So hydration is definitely something that I pay attention a lot more to, and it's one of the most undervalued things in weight loss. In fact, typically hydration leads to better recovery. It leads to better, energy levels, and at the same time, it actually may lead to more weight loss. Even though if you think like drinking more water is going to make you retain more water, the reality is that your body flushes a lot more, so your like the fluid balance is more manageable. So if you're looking just at the number standpoint, you're typically going to actually weigh less if that's just the only thing that you care about. Just in case for those of you guys like wanting to just focus on the number. Anyways, so that's gonna be for a hydration standpoint. Number two, and obviously try to make it creative, right? You don't have to just drink water. For people that don't just like water, you can start to drink things like cucumber and adding lemons and strawberries or other kinds of fruits for make it that kind of summery twist in the process. And I think that's definitely helpful. One key to remember from the hydration standpoint is that um, alcohol does the opposite effect, and you need to make sure that as you're incorporating more alcoholic beverages, usually summer is time for seltzers and like the White Claws and all these different like million different brands that now have kind of come up in the seltzer industry. You have to remember that those things have calories. Those things are not making you hydrated, and those things are typically going to add up like unwanted calories without you even knowing it. And they're also going to kind of get you pretty tipsy, which is, by experience, I can tell you that. And they're going to typically lead to overeating. So I'm not saying not to have them, but pay attention as you're doing that. One quick tip that I give a lot of my clients is when you're drinking alcohol, chase every single drink with one full bottle of water. That's not only going to avoid hangovers, but at the same time, it's going to promote hydration and fullness, so you're not going to drink as much. Number two, we need to start to redefine fitness throughout the summer, right? So a lot of times we don't have to think just only going to the gym is going to get you to get the results, but using outside as a way to obviously incorporate more activities, especially during the summer, particularly if you live in areas that gets like, they get pretty tough winters and snow and those different things like that. So make fitness fun, from like going and walking in the sun, or like if you live by a river, renting a kayak or a paddleboard and actually doing that a couple times or maybe once a week, going out to like a local swimming pool and just kind of like swimming some laps, like hiking. All these different things are going to kind of be part of exercise, and you don't have to think that you have to lift and curl weights or like do squats in order for you to be able to be fit and to incorporate exercise. It's a combination of things. It's just simply getting into an active lifestyle. The third thing that you guys can start to implement would be to start to incorporate a little bit more different cooking methods that are going to support health and make cooking a little bit more fun. Grilling would be definitely going to be the top one, particularly because everybody this summer wants to grill out, particularly the top north kind of states where that's not typically an option when like, snow is like covering the ground. So get fun with it, from like using different kinds of fruits like pineapple and watermelon and trying different kinds of vegetables. But that's going to be a cool thing. Like if you guys are not planning to do that, then that's something else I can incorporate. Now I live in Florida, so I can grill pretty much every day if I wanted to. So for us, it's like, okay, it's like a normal thing, particularly if you also live in Florida. But just thinking about it as the different kind of way of cooking that is going to also kind of like help you incorporate some different kinds of ways. Like we love to kind of do vegetable and meat skewers, and those are great because you're incorporating vegetables in a protein source altogether. So that's going to be a good option too. The fourth thing, as you're kind of getting more social, and there's more, like, less restrictions, a lot of times we're saving up calories for the weekend. And even though mathematically that could make sense from the perspective of fat loss, it's not always the greatest idea, because the reality is that you're still kind of entering into this binging pattern that is not always going to be the most mentally or physically sound decision that you could be making. Really, when you're hungry all week, when you see certain things that make you trigger your emotions and your brain, you're gonna be like, "Oh yes, this is exciting. I love this. I want this." And then because of that connection with your emotions, you're typically going to lose control over it. So instead of, like, you see a bag of Oreos, you're not gonna stop at one. You're gonna go for two and three, and then before you know it, it's going to be the full bag. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through your entire day. So instead of, like, saving up the calories, it's like finding ways in which you can incorporate those, like, quote unquote, like, unhealthy foods throughout the week, so it becomes easier for you to be able to do that on a week to week basis, right? And so when the weekend comes around, the pizza you were craving since Monday, you had it on Tuesday, and then you had a healthier type of alternative, so you're not craving that anymore, right? So avoid that saving up the calories for the weekend type of mentality. And last but not least, pay attention to your body signals, right? One of the things I mentioned earlier is because it's summer, it's hotter, so you sweat more. So a lot of times you may not be drinking enough water. And then what's going to happen as a result of that is simply you're going to say, like, I'm hungry, when in reality, sometimes you may just be dehydrated and you need water. So pay attention to those kind of things that your body's kind of like trying to tell you. That is definitely, like, kind of like the mentality. And then also think about too is, like, it's a situation in which you're in, right? Like, oh, it's summer, it's hot, like, I can totally crush, like, a bunch of beers, like, this is something I don't usually do, blah blah blah. You could totally do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. Sometimes, like, we get confused by, like, I'm going to kind of give myself, like, free reign to do whatever because I was so good, also using food and alcohol as a reward. The reality is, like, you could totally do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you should, right? So I think it's important to just simply think about what your goals are, and thinking about the kind of changes that you could be making and the decisions that you could be making that can compromise that, right? So you can that, I mean, there are some kind of like things that you try to, like, you need to kind of avoid the mentality of it, which is really kind of like saying to yourself, like, I can't really have all this. It's not about I can't, it's simply like I could do it, I just choose not to. Or I mean, these are the options that I kind of have available to me, I'm just going to choose not to make them because of the fact that I have goals that I'm wanting to achieve. So what's a compromise that you can find? That's really what I tried to do. So this weekend we went to a river house with some of our friends here in Tampa. So when it comes down to, like, eating, we're prioritizing, did I make the best decisions? Probably not. I had a lot of food and I had a lot of chips. I remember that. And I had some alcohol. Now, I know for a fact that I was active and I was paying attention to the things that I was, like, doing. So for example, I was paying attention to how much protein I was having. I was paying attention to the things I was adding to my protein sources. I brought in snacks. I try to focus on hydration. Did I do the best job? I actually didn't. And it's okay. There are going to be weekends in which you totally mess things up. And the goal for me, some people would say, like, I need to start restricting myself. I'm going to work out like 20 hours today or this week. I'm going to do so much because of the fact that I just kind of blew it on the weekend. The reality is that you can blow it on the weekend and you can just move on from it and just simply kind of like resume where you left off, and nothing bad is going to happen. One bad meal or one bad weekend is not going to undo weeks and months of, like, consistency and progression. Now, if that weekend turns into that restriction that leads to another weekend of binging, then that weekend turns into two. Those two turns into a month of consistent, like, binging kind of episodes and, like, not paying attention to your goals. And that's usually before you know it, before, like, the end of the summer, before the end of the year, you're probably at the same place or worse than when you started. So those are my quick tips. Again, not a long episode, but I still wanted to make sure that maybe you had something to kind of take away. So send this over to anybody that is, like, thinking of doing the next, like, juice cleanse for the summer, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of help them out effectively and easily. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure that you share it. Just simply take a quick screenshot of your phone right now if you're listening on your phone, and just go to Instagram or Facebook and just simply hit that share and tag me. We'd love to say hello. So I will see you guys next week. We're definitely gonna have a chit chat series now, bringing Antonio and Desi, where we're gonna talk a little bit more about what's going on in our lives. Those are two our dads, and I'm probably gonna go over some like updates from May as we kind of go through that. So, anyways, it was great seeing you guys in here today. I'll see you next week on another episode of the Nutrition Blueprint Podcast. Have a good one and enjoy the rest of your day and week.